Hey, I'm Tash. I'm the marketing manager at Cosive.
Hi everyone, I'm Cozzupoli. I'm a principal security advisor here at Cosive. Been here for about just over a month. My background has been in multiple vendors, working with the C-suite, top-down approach, selling and consultative work. Happy to be here.
So today, Joe, we're going to dive into why the C-suite and CISOs should care about cyber threat intelligence. So yeah, I guess tell us a little bit about why you're passionate about this topic and why CISOs and boards should care about CTI.
To me, CTI changes the way decisions are made. It gives CISOs and the C-suite clarity on where investment and what to deprioritize. And it gives boards confidence that their spend is tied to real adversary activity. Without CTI, it's guesswork. With CTI, there's evidence-based alignment to actual threats to their organisation.
So you see CTI as a way that essentially can focus investment and resources on the highest impact threats rather than just spray and pray. Is that kind of what you feel?
Yeah, exactly. It's actual intelligence, right? As the name says, it's actually intelligence. So we can turn that intelligence into outcomes and prioritize where the board and the C-suite put their money, prioritize their projects. With more intelligence and better intelligence you have, then that trickles down the business to your operations center, where they're not chasing false positives. They're actually working on real alarms, real alerts. Then up to the project and architecture teams, where they want to deploy certain new platforms or have some internal policy project work. They can align that in with the intelligence they're provided.
And how is CTI different from just monitoring or compliance?
Great question again. So monitoring tells you what's happened inside your environment. Compliance tells you what you should be doing. CTI actually tells you what adversaries are doing and to your organization, like your own. It's a forward-looking, proactive approach, not just a checklist or a log review. You're actually seeing what adversaries are doing. I kind of say it's similar to doing behavior analytics on users. Should Tash be logging in at 2 a.m.? How come we can see Tash logging in at 2 a.m.? So we kind of know what's normal for Tash's behavior in a role. So with CTI, we actually get that view of adversaries. So what they're doing to similar organizations in your vertical, and then that's where they could attack us potentially. So let's look into those areas versus we're in financial services. We might not need to look at operational technology adversaries and threats because we don't do any of that. So it's about being smart and aligning what the adversaries are doing and using that as information for proactive work.
What's in it for the board? How do they benefit from it? Directly?
So with CTI, it gives the boards visibility of live risks, not just theoretical ones. So not just a spreadsheet with high, medium, low, which is nothing wrong with that. But based on using CTI, we can uplift those spreadsheets, right, with actual real threats going on. So it informs about realistic crisis scenarios, can support compliance requirements, with APRA, CPS 234, or any SOCI regulations if you are doing critical infrastructure. It demonstrates that security investment is protecting revenue and continuity. Boards don't need indicators or technical feeds. They don't worry about that. They won't understand that. They need to know what threats were stopped, what suppliers added risks, and what business impact was avoided. And that's what CTI provides.
What does good CTI look like in practice?
So everyone's got their views, and I'm sure there's more technical views, but to me, good CTI has 4 layers. Strategic, so sector trends that guide risk appetite and budget. Operational, threat focus areas for the operations team and IR teams, so incident response, that is. Tactical, is the next layer. So adversary behavior mapped to, say, the MITRE attack that shape detections, right? And then the technical, so high confidence indicators ready for the SIEM or the EDR platform. So you're feeding your SIEM and your EDR platforms with correct intelligence to then act on the correct alerting on the technical side, on the operational side. So if you're missing one of these, you're either too abstract for the board or too tactical for decision makers.
How do you suggest that C-suite execs measure the value of CTI?
Yeah, another great question. And all boards and C-suites measure differently, but the best way you can do it is by the decisions that it changes. So metrics include, reduced detection and containment times, number of supplier risks identified before contracts were signed, for example, percentage of the detection rules tied back to CTI requirements, and crisis exercises shaped by the intelligence reporting. If CTI isn't influencing budget, procurement, or crisis planning, then it's not really delivering any value. That's the value where it comes back to the C-suite and boards.
What do you think that the future of CTI looks like?
Yeah, cool. So obviously with emerging technologies like our favorite AI everywhere, CTI will be more integrated into business decision making. I see that's where it's heading. Where the value is. We'll see less feeds for analysts and more board level insights tied to business outcomes. The real differentiator won't be the volume of data, but how well intelligence is translated into executive action. So again, tie in the threat intelligence that we get, but putting it back to the business that will deliver outcomes through the executive actions.
What are the common mistakes that you see organisations make with CTI?
Yeah, from what I've seen, the biggest mistake is treating CTI as a feed to collect, not an advantage to use. Too many teams drown in indicators without tying them back to business decisions. Another mistake is failing to tailor CTI requirements to their sector and risk appetite. Intelligence that's generic is just noise. So going back to that original platform where you're getting all these alerts that aren't relevant to you. So unless you tailor it and have the proper requirements and do some consulting, with third parties, such as Cosive, that we could help you, tailor your threat intelligence to be more specific to you and your needs.
How does CTI help specifically with things like third party and supply chain risk?
So suppliers are often the softest target. So CTI can highlight which vendors or partners are actively being exploited by threat groups. That means you can tie in onboarding, strengthen SLAs with them, or add compensating controls before you sign or renew a contract. It's a proactive assurance, not reactive cleanup. So basically, it's part of the due diligence now for any third party. We've seen many third party attacks. It's supply chain attacks over the last 5-6 years. So having that intelligence and being proactive in that sense goes a long way.
And how do you feel CTI can support incident response and resilience?
Yeah, so on a more technical level, so intelligence-led playbooks and detections mean incidents are identified faster, contained earlier. CTI also feeds into crisis simulations, so leadership can rehearse decisions against realistic attack scenarios. It's not just about faster recovery, it's about maintaining the continuity when it matters, as I like to say. But basically, you're using, fake scenarios, but you're using intelligent fake scenarios, realistic ones that could happen, not be blindsided by when it does happen. Because I say when, not if. So you want it to be like a dress rehearsal, and that's a big advantage for businesses to get the business going. Continuity is key.
What's your message to executives who might think that CTI is too technical for them?
Yeah, this is a common one, and it's about breaking those barriers. So CTI isn't about technical detail, it's about business impact. So executives don't need to know IP addresses, malware hashes, or anything like that. They need to know, what did we stop, where are we exposed, and what's the plan. So good CTI translates technical threats into board-ready language and measurable business outcomes. So again, gives the organisation from bottom up the intelligence and being able to be proactively, have the right security controls, have alignment with the business in terms of their security projects and any policies that are ongoing, and just be ahead of the game in terms of the bad actors as much as they can. And good CTI gives you this.
I think a lot of people, when they think CTI, they think, as you said, IPs and hashes in a threat intelligence platform, threat feeds. Obviously, CISOs are not going to be in threat intel platforms looking at that stuff. What does CTI typically look like for them? In what form are they getting CTI, and how is it helping them make better decisions?
Yeah, so generally there'll be platforms. The larger organizations may have platforms, reporting dashboards, or even just reports that are sent weekly, and then maybe monthly in more of a summarized form. So what is in there needs to be accurate and shouldn't just be a big history intelligence for Australia, right? It should be to their organization and then maybe zoom out a bit to their vertical, to their sector. So, maybe one for their org, and then if they're in financial services, then one for, financial services organizations or banks, or even if it's insurance, it'll be slightly different, just to give them that relevant data to them, the most relevant data, most accurate data for them to take action on. And then the security teams, they manage can then, work on, say, the training exercises, right? The crisis management planning. They can also influence, budgeting and procurement for projects. And when they're working with vendors, they're working with the right vendors for what they need, for the controls that they may need. And again, and going down to the technical operations level, when they're thinking about changing their SIEM or changing their EDR, then the threat intelligence feeds they are using are accurate to them and most relevant to them. So gives their analysts correct data to action, and they're not just working on false alarms half the time, and then the real bad actor gets in, right? Because they're spending too much time on something that isn't relevant to them.
Another thing that I've noticed is that regulations like PCI DSS and HIPAA and things like that, there's a big emphasis placed on being able to show that you have awareness of the threat landscape and that you are doing your due diligence to stay across that. And a lot of people have been saying that CTI, having a CTI program can help there. How do you see that playing out?
Oh, definitely, because CTI, it isn't just a dashboard with just a bunch of logs or a bunch of feeds. A good CTI program and platform will feed into the other tools, like your SIEM, like your endpoint detection platform. Even if you're using cloud security or SASE or other platforms like that, it feeds data into that. And then what was a big buzzword maybe 5 years ago is now a reality: zero trust framework. And I say it's a framework. It's kind of, some people say it's an architecture, some people say it's just a product, but it's never been a product. Zero trust is more of a framework, and to have the most optimal zero trust deployment and methodology in your business is having the most accurate threat intelligence to your business. And having that most accurate and best suited threat intelligence platform that has been optimized, has been fine-tuned, makes it the hardest to crack, let's say, right? So that's where I see, where you look at those compliance and all those things like PCI, and I mentioned CPS 234 and SOCI, and Essential 8 as well, right? You have to have, there can't be tick boxes in that sense. And businesses are starting to see that they're not just tick boxes anymore. So having a threat intelligence program and platform in place would just help those to no end and delivers outcomes in that sense.
And one thing I know almost every board is talking about at the moment is ransomware. That's a really big concern. Do you think that CTI has a big role to play in protecting against things like ransomware?
Yes, sure. Because again, looking back at having the correct feeds and the attack techniques that bad actors are using on your vertical sector, that goes a long way. So is a ransomware, is it a big thing in your organization, in your sector, versus a DDoS attack? And then if it is, a big thing in your sector, then what type of ransomware attacks are they doing? What should we be looking up for? Is it phishing? Is it social engineering on the phone, etc.? So it's about having that intelligence. Again, we're coming back to the key word there is intelligence for me. And that's where we can help drive outcomes. And that's the type of language that the C-suite and board will understand and want to know about. You can tell them all the technical stuff about the threats, about the bad actors, about the techniques and all that, but about turning that intelligence into outcomes and then helping that trickle down into things like your risk appetite, your spending of the business and what the business saves, what risks were avoided, what impact was avoided because of this.
I can imagine at the moment CISOs are under a lot of pressure from different parts of security to sort of care about that part, like, the number one priority is insider threats. The number one priority is auditing or compliance or governance. Every corner is sort of saying this is the number one priority. You have a take that CTI should be a very high priority. I guess how would you argue that CTI should sort of be top of mind for CISOs over some of those other competing parts of security?
Well, it wouldn't even be over. CTI would give you the information and intelligence to then prioritize and deprioritize that noise. So obviously people in larger organizations, there'll be multiple security managers looking after each of their departments, and they will hear from either their vendors that they talk to or partners or, just whatever's on any other news feeds they hear or talk to among their colleagues, their peers, industry peers. It's about then using CTI to say, okay, well, insider threats a big thing for everyone, right? Because that's people. But things like maybe, like I said, DDoS attacks or any threats on OT technology, to know that that's relevant or not in your business, that's what CTI will tell you, right? Because it'll say, well, most adversaries are looking into doing social engineering attacks via the phone or even some via email versus trying to break your network via a DDoS attack or try to hack into your file servers as such. When maybe you're using cloud anyway, right? So CTI gives the size of that intelligence to sit back and go, okay, let's look at the bigger picture. CTI is telling me that, X, Y, Z is happening, and we should put that ahead of, threats, EDNF, that other security managers are telling them in their team.
Right. So it can actually help them kind of prioritize.
Make decisions.
Yeah. That makes sense. As we work toward wrapping up, Joe, is there anything else you'd say to, a CISO listening to this who might have been maybe skeptical about CTI, the value of CTI, listening to this podcast, just wanting to understand a bit more about what it is? The final parting words for that listener?
Yeah, look, it's like I said in my opening question answer. Without CTI, decisions are guesswork, and with CTI, they're evidence-based and aligned to actual threats. So what that means is you'll be able to go to your either the board or your C-level peers and bring evidence with you to say our spend on CTI prevented these attacks, and by preventing these attacks, we've saved the business this much money, and that's what the board cares about. They're either saved in spending less with vendors instead of buying every product under the sun, or saved as in prevented attacks, relevant attacks that have happened to other peer organizations within the sector. It's not trivial or trivia as long as you have a great CTI program that's been optimized for your organization in your sector, and that's where we can help.
And on that note, Joe, I guess, we'll put our vendor hats on for a minute or two. How can Cosive help someone listening to this if they're just sort of starting on their journey of like, CTI sounds like it could really help me with decision making and prioritization? Where can they start? How can we help?
Look, you can reach out to myself and the team through LinkedIn or email or through our website. We're happy to have a chat just to scope out what your organization is after, what you're currently doing now, and we can do that gap analysis for you. Whether it's you're starting to build a CTI program from scratch, or you have one, you want it optimized, or you're thinking about sharing. and join in our MISP program. We can help you there with our cloud MISP. So really, it's just having that first conversation, and we will just want to, especially me, I just want to hear what's going on, and then how I easily align with how we can help you in that sense.